Hey, have you heard about Podcast On? This is a global podcast charity event where hosts dedicate one episode to a nonprofit they care about and release it together the same week. No fundraising, no fees, just powerful storytelling for good. Podcast On 2026 runs March 14th to March 20th. Join thousands of podcasters worldwide and use your voice for impact. It's free, it's simple, and it starts at podcasthon.org.
The Marketing Podcast Network is a proud partner of Podcast On.
You enjoy podcasts. We know because you're listening to one. Hi, I'm Jason Falls, the executive producer of the Marketing Podcast Network. We love podcasts too, so much so that in addition to providing you with a great episode you're listening to, we also help businesses, brands, and even individuals produce their podcasts. MPN Studios offers podcast consulting and production services to help you get you or your business its very own podcast. We've helped dozens of smart people, advertising agencies, and brands develop podcasts. All you do is record your content or interview. We take that and deliver a professionally produced audio or video episode, complete with show notes, transcriptions, and even promotional clips to use on social media. And our monthly subscription prices are hard to beat. If you or your company are jonesing to have your own podcast to establish thought leadership, drive business leads, or just have fun talking about your business or topic of choice, we'd love to help. Learn more at marketingpodcasts.net/studio. That's marketingpodcasts.net/studio.
Marketing is hard. But I'll tell you a little secret. It doesn't have to be. Let me point something out. You're listening to a podcast right now, and it's great. You love the host. You seek it out and download it. You listen to it while driving, working out, cooking, even going to the bathroom. Podcasts are a pretty close companion. And this is a podcast ad. Did I get your attention? You can reach great listeners like yourself with podcast advertising from Libsyn Ads. Choose from hundreds of top podcasts offering host endorsements, or run a pre-produced ad like this one across thousands of shows to reach your target audience and their favorite podcasts with Libsyn Ads. Go to libsynads.com, that's LIBSYN, ads.com today.
In this episode of Your Radiant Spirit, I'm joined by Kellie Daab, accidental artist, intuitive creator, and founder of Crystal Lady Creative. What began as a moment of stillness during the global shutdown led Kellie into an entirely new chapter where her love of crystals and creative curiosity blossomed into a body of work that's helping women feel seen, held, and healed. We talk about how her signature Crystal Ladies came to life, why people often cry when they meet them, and how each piece becomes an energetic agreement, carrying intention, affirmation, and crystal wisdom into someone's life. Kellie's journey is a powerful example of what happens when we follow the nudge, even if we don't know where it's leading. And if that theme speaks to you, if you're feeling something stir, something ready to shift, I want to gently invite you into the work I've been creating behind the scenes. Over the past few months, I've been building a transformative experience, all designed to help you identify and clear the blocks that keep you stuck, emotionally, physically, or spiritually, and reconnect you to your most aligned, fulfilling path. You'll hear threads of that energy woven through this conversation, because like Kellie, I believe our art, our energy, and our intuition are guiding us somewhere deeper. I can't wait for you to listen to this episode. Let's dive in.
Welcome to Your Radiant Spirit, the podcast where art, energy, and inspiration come alive. Hosted by award-winning intuitive painter Heather Eck, synesthetic artist, chakra expert, and spiritual guide, this show invites you to explore the transformative power of color, creativity, and spiritual healing. Heather's unique gift of seeing color through energy fuels her stunning spirit portraits and chakra-aligned artworks, designed to bring healing and alignment to your life. Whether you're curious about the magic of chakras, looking to unlock your creative potential, or eager to connect with your radiant spirit, you're in the right place. Your radiant spirit is calling. Let's dive in.
Welcome, Kellie. I'm so happy to meet you. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to chat today.
Yeah, me too. I feel like there's so much about your art that is healing for people, inspiring for people. I'd love to know how you got started and what your story is. How you told me earlier that you pivoted from business to art. So I'd love to hear how you made that transition.
So I'm an accidental artist, is what I say. accidental because I never had an interest in art as a kid. I wasn't the kid that sketched in, I was a musician, went to college for music performance. And then through lifetime became a professional event planner and then, worked in multiple capacities in the event industry, then started consulting and teaching and speaking, and then COVID. And so immediately overnight, a client called me and said, I lost $1 million. And so at that time, I was like, I can't charge people. I just couldn't. My heart wouldn't let me do it. And so I continued supporting people in my community and then just felt like it was time to just shift completely. And so I started putting crystals in things like soap and body products and, like hanging in your car and all kinds of things. And that is where the Crystal Ladies came from. So I first taught myself how to draw. And then they have just continued to develop over time. I've developed my own techniques because it's not like anything I've ever seen. You can't really find it anywhere. I just sort of dreamed it up. And everyone wants to know, like, how did you get the idea? I was literally sitting in a chair because I went through this period of just like a total sit. I had been going 100 miles an hour. At some point, I realized I had been home in that month less than I had been away because I was speaking and traveling, going from one conference to the next. And it was like this all hit so fast that I just literally felt like whiplash in a chair. Like I was just sitting still. And I sat still, not really. I have children and a life and a house to care for and all those things, but emotionally, I sort of sat still for a really long time. And that is when this idea came to my head. Like, what if I just add crystals to line art? And then it has just developed its own sort of images and ideas in my head since then.
Wow. Okay. So you had been working with crystals before, so you were obviously drawn to them. What is it about their energy that you felt connected to?
What the first actually it was my daughter who said, Mom, I want to get some crystals. And I was like, that's fine. I'm okay with that. But you need to know what they mean. Like, if you're going to get them, we need to know what they mean. This is not like we're not going to play around with just some rocks on the wall. We're going to know what they mean. And so that was sort of the impetus of like learning about them was if you're going to own them, we're going to know what they mean. And so we went and tried to explore like things that stood out to us. And then I started sort of like knowing in advance, like what this crystal meant without any kind of like, and then I started using them in, meditation and things like that and started realizing kind of how my relationship with them was changing my everyday energy. And that was kind of how I was like, oh, okay. And then it was like, okay, I just want to put them everywhere. Like I want to put them everywhere in my life whenever I can. Like, how do I infuse my everyday life with crystal energy? And that was where the idea of the original business came from that sort of plopped up in the middle.
Crystal lady that you created and what it felt like to put her together and then how you sort of blossomed from there. Because a lot of your work is around flowers and the beauty of flowers and the colors that you use. And I'm strongly connected to color through the chakras. And so crystals have been a part of my orbit for a while. So I love them too. Just like your daughter, I'm like, I love these, but I also want to know, what do they mean?
Yes.
Like,
What are
how
they
can they
meant to
support us?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So take us back to that first, it doesn't have to be the first one, but the first couple that you did where you were like, oh my gosh, there's something here.
Well, what's funny is I actually printed it. I downloaded like a graphic from the internet and printed it. And I was like, oh, this is cool. And then I put on, it was like, there were some flowers. I literally just put like a quartz, like, let's see, where is it? Like a piece of quartz sticking out of the flower. It was so silly. And then I just posted it on the internet, like, hey guys, look what I made. And I had gotten some peanut to put someplace, but when they came, they were super, super small. And I was like, I can't use these at all. And then I was like, oh, I think I can use them for this. So I was playing around and I made leaves of peanut. The first one is very rudimentary, very basic. And I was like, oh, okay. So I posted on the internet, like one would, especially in the middle of COVID, right? Like, what else do we have to do? Hey, look what I did. And everyone's like, that's really cool. You should try it again. So I made another one. And then it was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then I made another one. I don't remember what the second one was. The third one I made, someone was like, that's mine. I'll buy it. And I was like, what? Really? You want to buy this? They're like, yep, absolutely. And so the lady literally like came to my house and picked it up like the day she said she wanted to buy it, like just from my like random social media from having already had built a following for like soaps and products and random stuff, crystal related. And I was like, okay, sure. Why not? Now I hope it's okay. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I sold that. But at the same time, it was sort of like an experiment for me. It didn't have any, I think that part of the reason why things have come out so organically is because it didn't have like a long-term intention. I wasn't trying to build a business. I wasn't trying to be an artist. I was just trying to do something cool that filled my time and made me feel good, right? Like it was really all about, and then the more I did them, I've always loved liner. I've always loved the way that it sort of embodies a woman where she can be sitting doing absolutely nothing but look so like in herself, you know? And something that you can capture with a simple line, but is not necessarily our lived reality in terms of how we feel inside as women. And so as I did more of them, I started to learn what embodiment looked like and therefore what it might feel like. And so as I would work on them, it would be like, oh, the word for this person is, let's say peace, inner peace, or she just exudes love. And so once I started doing that, then I started matching the crystals to the intention that was coming out of the piece. Like, oh, she just has this look of like assurance. So I started matching the crystals to the piece. And the more I did that, the relationship with the art that I was then learned how to draw and the relationship with the crystals and output ultimately became sort of an energetic exchange of how was I relating to this piece. And then the crystals, honestly, I always say the lady has an opinion. They really do. They have an opinion. I'll lay down the crystals and sort of like clumps, sort of like a color palette. And it'll be like, nope, that doesn't go. This one does not belong to me. And sometimes the name will come right at the beginning and sometimes the name will come right through. Sometimes a crystal will be in my hand and just jump right out into a specific spot. Like, okay, you go there, I guess. Like, so I have learned to sort of surrender to the process as much as lead the process. And so I think what's happened is it's become a much more organic output than like what I was doing in business consulting, where it was my job to create the thing that people were liking. And every crystal that goes into the artwork, every tiny thing that goes in the artwork, I touch with my hands. So it's an exchange. The whole thing is an exchange of energy, positive and intentional.
That is so powerful and so beautiful. And it sounds so healing to me, especially because you're infusing each piece with your energy, but with the crystal energy, with the intention. And I imagine that people are drawn to so many aspects of the piece through the name or through the way that the woman is posed or through the colors or the crystals that are used. How do people respond to the piece when they see it in person? I saw on Instagram you do a number of shows. So I imagine you're sitting there watching people engage with the work and sort of like feel their way through a piece. Tell us about that, because that sounds so powerful.
This is my husband's favorite thing about coming to shows with me. And when you have a husband who loves coming for this purpose, you did the right thing. But he says his favorite thing about the crystal ladies and being at these experiences is that he gets to hear people's response, because I'm usually doing and selling. So like I'll be creating as I'm going and explaining and doing the thing, but he gets to hear the initial reactions every time someone sees, and it's this like, whoa, or like, wow. And they will oftentimes just go immediately to something or someone that stands out. It's like there's an energetic draw to something specific. I like this one. Oh my gosh, look at what she's saying. And then usually the intention comes after, which normally you would think the intention of the piece would be the first thing, but they draw to a piece and then they read the intention. And each one of the pieces in their description has affirmations that match the properties of the crystals. So, for example, the name might be love, but the affirmations are about loving themselves or learning how to create a loving relationship with their own, personalities or their own weaknesses, things like that. So then when they read the affirmations, we usually see tears 9 times out of 10, or they're like, oh my gosh, that was exactly what I needed. Or a lot of times they'll have something going on in their lives and then they'll come and see the crystal ladies and they'll have an experience where it transcends what's happening in their lives. And this is sort of like the positive energy to this negative experience. And they're like, oh, that is exactly what I needed. This is the energy I need to bring into my life.
Wow, I love this so much. It feels so similar to what I do with spirit portraits and connecting to somebody. Sometimes I call them commissions for people I haven't met yet because you're creating something so deeply spiritual that somebody connects to it at a soul level.
Yes.
And they're drawn to it sort of magnetically because there's something about that piece that's speaking to them at a deeper level than they were probably even aware of. And there's something so strongly healing and supportive in that. So I'd love to know, when somebody collects a piece and they take it home, what do you often hear from them about? Do you hear from them, number one? And then what's the reaction that they have when they've been able to live with that piece for a little while and let it sort of minister to them?
Usually I see them when they're ready for another piece.
Oh,
So I will see them. We're like, okay, it's been up. I love it. One lady's like, I look at it every single day and I say my affirmation to myself when I see her in the morning. Or I put this the other day, the piece sold, her name was Powerful. And it was sort of like a back vignette with flowers sort of on each side of like, she was unclothed woman, sort of sitting sideways, and her name was Powerful. And her affirmations were about, basically harnessing your inner power. And this woman put it by her vanity. And so she's like, every morning, so she sent me a picture of it on the wall and said, every morning when I do my makeup or I sit down for my self-care time, I remind myself of how powerful I am. And so the relationships that they build with them are really about personal development. And a lot of times people will gift them once they're finished, or if they meet someone who needs that particular intention or affirmation, they'll gift it and come back to get their next sort of evolutionary step in, relationship with a crystal lady. Or we have people that will collect them to put specific intentions in specific rooms. I want this intention in this room and this intention in this room. And so the relationship that people have with them are completely varied based on where they are in their specific spiritual journey.
yes, I love that so much. I'm sure too. So as I'm listening to, I'm thinking about this rise of the divine feminine that's happening right now and has been for a while. And I'm sure you connect to that too. Like a lot of the time when I'm doing a spirit portrait for somebody, a lot of times women especially are stuck in their throats and their hearts. We sort of dwell in the space of needing to find this place of deep unconditional love for ourselves, but also this place of true, authentic expression. And so that's like a trend that I've been seeing in my work. I'm curious if you see a trend in some of the pieces or the words or the affirmations that people are drawn to at particular times, especially during COVID and beyond. Are you seeing any sort of collective consciousness shifts that are happening around how people are collecting, what they're collecting, and what they're drawn to there?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because I don't know if I've put the math necessarily, but I would say that what's really interesting is that I think what I see is people willing to say yes to that transformation. Where before, there was a limitation. That's not possible for me. This is sort of like the path to the possible. I think in my case, a lot of times when they come to me, they're hurting or they're trying to figure out how to heal from said thing. And then I give them something that creates a bridge And so they allow themselves that sort of freedom. They give themselves permission because it's not cheap, right? So you're making an energetic agreement with this intention and affirmation when you purchase them. Or if you're gifting it, which doesn't happen a ton. Honestly, most people buy what for themselves.
Yeah.
But if you're gifting, right, you're setting a very strong intention for the person that you're gifting for. And it's because you know they need that. And 9 times out of 10, we hear that story. This person is going through this thing, and we really need to see their confidence shift. For example, a family had me do a portrait of their daughter for Christmas, and then she messaged me. She loves it. It's amazing. She's like, she's so much happier, and she's much more emotionally sound. And so while technically she didn't make the agreement with it, right, once she then saw what the intention set for her by her parents was, she agreed to that intention by accepting that gift, right? So, like, a lot of times it's about the agreement to let the energy change you and then to come in alignment with that energy. And I think we're seeing more of that. Like, it doesn't take them, once that connection is made, it doesn't take them very long to say, oh, this is mine. Like, this one's mine, or this was for me, or, and a lot of times I'll people come up and say, oh, I really want a piece. And they'll look and they'll say, no, she's not here today. And walk away, So
Wow.
we know that, and they're like, I'll be back. The right one will be here at the right time. So that's kind of just how the energetic exchange work. I think people are just looking to allow themselves to heal.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. How has your life changed since you've started creating these powerful women?
Well, I'm sitting in my garage. That was originally a garage and is now a full service studio where we have framing stations and all kinds of, completely retrofitted to. So as far as like my everyday intention is completely different. How I spend my time, where I put my energy, everything is different on that front. But I also would say that I've become much more in tune or aware with just the surroundings. I've learned more, obviously, about the crystals and how to sort of play with the light and the color to create an emotion, right? Like, to use them in different ways every single time, and give myself even that permission to try that. Because like I said, I'm an accidental artist. So I don't always know. I just did this is silly, but I just did this art evaluation with these professors from a local college. And I was like, so I'm an accidental artist. Please explain to me all the things I'm doing wrong. Right. And it's like, because I want to know, like, how do I fix it to make it even more amazing? And they just had the same, like, whoa look on their face looking at the art, and then said, don't do anything. Like, I was like, that's not what I wanted to hear. I wanted you to tell me all the things I was doing wrong. And they're like, don't touch it. Don't mess with it. You just keep letting it come out exactly how it's supposed to come out. Don't force it. Don't try new things. Just keep going with the evolution of the art. And I was like, okay. So the lesson, obviously, later in that is, after the frustration of like, well, I didn't get any help, which wasn't really true. But the lesson is that true art and true artists, I guess, are born from a feeling, not necessarily from a destination or a goal. Like, you don't just wake up and say, I'm going to make this art, and then it transcends. The art transcends when you transcend, if that makes sense.
It does. It makes 100% sense to me, and feels like something that is, I think a lot of artists go to, myself especially, where you are working, like, the work is you and you are the work, and you sort of move in flow with that. And that takes time to get to. Like you said, you've been doing this now for 5 years, right?
3 years.
3 years.
3 years. And obviously in that first year, they were really silly. I can't even, it makes me sad to think that people own these things. But in the last 2 years, they have been much more intentional and, and done with a lot more eloquence.
Yeah. How's the process of making for you? I know it, I think you said in your bio too that it is super meditative for you. Like, what's the process like when you sit down to create? How do you tune in and start to channel that energy through your hands and your
Yeah. So usually I start with a color palette, which isn't necessarily as meditative as, as it sounds, but when you lay them, giant clumps of crystals in places, it starts to become sort of like moving around a crystal grid. It's very similar to crystal gridding, right? So you're moving the energy as you move these palettes to kind of like play around with how does the light work there? Does this color go here? What goes up here? And that is when it starts to pull itself together and you start to see it in a more like, I can see how this is going to come together. And once that palette is set, that's when I start sort of laying all the pieces in. And once you begin the process of laying the pieces in, I don't usually stop until the piece is done. So it's like everything else is set. And then it's like, no, I need all of this time to just put all these pieces on. So, and that's not always true. Some of our newer pieces take a lot longer. And so they are done in pieces. But usually, if it's just on paper and on a backing board, that one is done in a much more meditative process where I'm working it until it's done.
Okay, got it.
And then we use like a hematite at the end. All of our pieces have an ellipsis, which means and so on. So we close that time frame when the art is finished by putting the ellipsis on, meaning and so on. So it goes on forever and ever. And because it's hematite, it grounds the piece and protects the piece and protects the intention of the piece. And that's like that's our signature piece on at the end.
I love that. And was the hematite part of that experience for you from the beginning, or did you evolve into the hematite?
Our very first piece has it on there.
Awesome.
How I did that, I have no idea. But yes, our very first piece is on there. Because in my mind, I was still thinking you still have to ground these energies. Like you still know that you need to ground the energy. So I started doing that very, very early on. And now it's become the signature of our pieces. We always tell people that they don't have these on there. I didn't. So yeah.
Wow, I love that. How has your sort of spiritual growth been supported through this process? Like you had this interest in crystals and then it's evolved, and I'm sure your spiritual gifts have opened up and evolved since then too. How has that shifted for you?
I think that when I started realizing that I had a relationship with the crystals, I started obviously studying even deeper crystal energy work, crystal concoctions, and I'm like, so I probably own a bookshelf full of books on crystal energy medicine, and how that works. I started teaching energy classes, and so there's sort of a okay, I'm gonna sound weird. I believe, okay, if you go looking, like if you go to Pinterest or Google or whatever, you can't find crystals used like this at all. You can see like in mosaic, sometimes they'll like stick a rough rock in, things like that. There's very few of like how we use it to bounce light and portray light and to draw energy into figures and into humans. And so this is where it gets weird. I think that the crystals make an agreement that it's okay for me to do this. Right?
Yeah.
So I've had other people that sell crystals that they'll drop a piece or the piece will break or, it gets something happens in a transport and they'll bring it to me. And this one beautiful, wise woman who I love, it came to me and said, they told me that they want you to have them because they want you to turn them into something beautiful and long lasting. Right. So, if you look at crystals in art in general, historically, it just doesn't exist except for like when they were cutting it and making like mosaic tabletops. So when we were in France, we saw these gorgeous tabletops that were made like Louis XIV era that literally are in the Louvre. They're that was the last time someone used crystals and, what would have been considered gemstones then in what we would call art. Like in any kind of, there's even an exhibit in a museum where there was all crystals in art, but they were like crystals painted into art or like they weren't used in the art. Like they're not a physical energetic exchange with the art and the crystal. So I think this is just my job. I think it's like this is the agreement that I made with them, is to put them back into a way of people not just seeing them as something to collect or something to interact with, but something that has everyday ramifications for their energetic lives.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And that doesn't sound weird at all. I think that's the stuff that it's part of the, I don't want to use the word woo, but it's like the spiritual energy that connects all of us, right? Like we're all energy, everything's energy. And I think that that is a beautiful thing to sort of have permission from the crystals to be used in that way. And I was going to ask you too, if people were to bring you pieces and say, can you incorporate this? A friend of mine gifted me this beautiful crystal here that I just love. And so, do people bring you, I have all up on my windowsill over here are like a bunch of stones. Do people bring you pieces and ask you to incorporate them in commissioned pieces? And if so, how does that work? Yeah.
Sometimes, yes. Usually, though, the pieces due to the size, obviously, of the piece, a lot of times I'll break them. So they have to really, or they'll be broken. And when they bring them to me, this spell, it's broken, but I want to commemorate its use or whatever. And then I can turn it into something. But we do spend a lot of time sort of breaking them down, making them smaller. But we use them a lot for like the center of the flowers. What's really fascinating too is the more unique the break is, or the more ugly the crystal is, a lot of times it becomes the prettiest part of the flower, which is so funny. So there's a little lesson in there. Like if it breaks, a lot of people say it was done, right? The energy was done working with you.
Yeah.
But a lot of times it just means that you're going to be used in a different way in your life.
Yeah.
It has a different intention from here forward.
I love that. I think especially too, because a lot of people go through a breakdown of some kind before they go through a breakthrough. And so there's something really symbolic about that broken piece that opens up new pathways to healing and to new ways of being too. That's really beautiful. I can't help but see on the wall behind you that they look like little cards with people's names on them. And you honor the people who collect or adopt the women, right?
Yes.
Tell me
So
about that.
behind us is the names. Actually, I have more I haven't put up yet. But the names of, I wouldn't say everyone because we started this maybe 6 to 8 months in, of the people who have a crystal lady. So when they choose their crystal lady, we call it adopting. So you've adopted your lady, they fill out their card and we put it back on the wall where they've taken her from. So as we're wrapping her up, they're sort of adopting and putting it on. And then we hang them on the wall so that we can send them positive energy. And obviously, we don't know which one each one of them has anymore. Yeah. A lot of times I will, when I see them again, I'll know, oh, you have so-and-so, or I have, or like, I will know generally, or they'll say, I have so-and-so. It's kind of like a club because we never meet the same lady twice. So I don't make any duplicate pieces because of the relationship that they sort of have with the person. So it is kind of like a club. I have so-and-so, she looks like this. I have so-and-so, she looks like this. And my friend has one and now it's my turn to have one. And so there's like this, I have, this is the intention I purchased. This is what she looks like. Here's the crystals that you used for that. And so it kind of creates this really fun relationship that I get to have long-term with the people that purchase crystal ladies.
I love that. I love that. And then they really do feel like they're part of a bigger movement of healing and positivity. And that's gorgeous. I saw on your Instagram, you do a lot of shows. Yeah. So I know that that's one way that people can find you, but for folks who aren't local to the area, how can people connect with you and collect a crystal lady?
Yeah, we spend most of our time on Instagram. So like I said, I was an accidental artist. So I didn't ever set out to start like a gallery or to be, so what we decided and was the easiest way to do it was to do what we call art drops. So basically we work towards a show. So for example, our last show was the Body, Mind, Spirit show in our town. And I made 15 new pieces for that show. And we have like 4 of them are left. So we will put up, I think I came home actually and made 3 more and in between, then that was crazy. I don't think we should ever do that again. But, but because they sold so fast, we wanted to try to have inventory for the next day. But essentially, I'll drop them all. We drop them in our Instagram stories, and people can claim them from there, and we'll ship them to them. So it makes it a little bit easier to get it no matter where you are. And for us, again, because art isn't the only thing in my life, I have kids and life and business and all these things. It works for me to be working towards something, drop it all at one time, and then work towards the next thing. Ultimately, our long-term goal will be to have a gallery where we're sort of redoing our website right now and working ourselves back to a more traditional artist style. But for now, this is how it's working best. So if you follow us, right now it's Crystal Lady Creative. And if you follow us there, it will, anytime we're at a show, we'll announce before we do the show that we're going to have an art drop and this is the day, and then follow the stories. And they get claimed so fast. I always feel like a mattress salesperson. Like, if you want this, you need it to claim it now. Because I was literally at a show live and people are texting, asking like dimension questions, things like that on the lady that they wanted on Instagram. And they're selling off the wall. Like out from underneath the person on the phone. Like, oh, she's gone. Like, you took 2 minutes to think about it. She's gone. So, so it really is I always tell people, like, you should have a plan for your budget as well as like what you're looking for, intention wise, color wise, things like that when we do the art drops. And then when it speaks to you, grab it.
Awesome. When you do your art drops, do you have a particular theme or feeling in mind, or do you just sort of let the spirit move you for?
Usually we start with the frames. So all the frames are vintage found. So I'll go out and hunt for frames, and then we'll bring them home and I'll look at the frame and be like, okay, this lady needs to kind of look like this, to kind of fit the vibe of the frame. And then we develop based on the frame. And so the lady is usually really fitting to that particular vibe. If the frame is more ornate, she might be a little more ornate, or, things like that. Or if the frame is long and skinny, she might be on her knees and long and skinny. Lots of different ways to use the frame to benefit the lady. So that's kind of how the ideas usually spark for what the lady will look like.
Awesome. Oh, I love this so much. It's such an incredible approach to art that has so much more of a higher purpose and a deeper meaning. And I love that so much. Is there anything that you haven't gotten to say, or anything you wanted me to ask you that I haven't asked you?
I don't think so. I mean, I think one of the things that like people say or don't understand when they are looking at energy and art, right, is that you don't have to necessarily believe in it for it to do its job, right? And that, I think, is oftentimes, if you just like it, if you just think it's pretty, that's okay too. Like, you're still making an energetic agreement with it, whether you like it or not. And then it'll go to work with whatever boundaries you put on it emotionally. They'll go to work, but they'll stop at the point that you have emotionally asked them to stop, So if you just think it's pretty, regardless of whether you believe in the spiritual side of this conversation for your work or mine, it's still art that you love and you think is pretty, and you should consider it important to you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so true. That's so true. And if you could give advice to somebody who's out there who is exploring becoming an accidental artist, what would you share with them?
Oh my goodness. I would just say, just try. I mean, like, you literally, like, if you have an idea, just try it. Like, and then refine it. And then, like, keep messing it up and keep doing it again and again, and, find better ways, and, Google the crap out of anything you can imagine. Like,
So
I was
true.
trying to find something last night and ended up in aquascaping land. Like, what is that? I didn't even know that existed, but it's kind of cool. So, like, you never know where it will take you. And I would say also, like, just be open to it. Like, again, I think that maybe I have a strange experience, but I don't feel as if I'm controlling it. I feel as if it sort of controls me. It sort of drives me.
Yeah.
So I don't really have a there's no magic or some sort of skill level, which is what I was really looking for those professors to tell me. But, like there isn't a magic or a skill level that you have to achieve before you're considered an artist, even though that has been a hard word for me to say. But, just try.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Kelly, I have so enjoyed chatting with you and learning more about your crystal ladies. I think you mentioned where folks can find you on your Instagram, but can you tell us one more time?
It's just at Crystal Lady Creative.
Awesome. And I'll put that in the show notes too.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Yes, it was so fun.
Yeah. It's really fun to talk to people who share like a similar energy and vibe, especially when it comes to art and healing too.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on Your Radiant Spirit. If today's episode lit up your creativity or helped you connect with your inner energy, please leave us a review and share your thoughts. Your feedback helps us spread more light to others. To dive deeper, visit www.heathereck.com for courses, workshops, and custom spirit portraits. And for daily inspiration and behind-the-scenes magic, follow Heather on Instagram at @HeatherEckArtist. Your Radiant Spirit is calling. Take the next step on your journey. See you next time.
This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.